Meeting this evening. Just to let you know that this meeting is open for public attendance, as always. And you may also watch this meeting remotely via live stream on YouTube. At this time, if Nicole, if you don't mind, giving us a opening roll call.
Sure can. Ms. Bushman,
Here.
Mr. Robbie,
Here.
Mr. Kowalski is excused. Mr. Pope,
Here.
Ms. Portson,
Here.
Ms. Erler,
Here.
Mr. Shader,
Here.
Mr. Summers,
Here.
Mr. Lepak.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. At this time, please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance to our flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. At this time, it's going to be one of the highlights of the meeting, because it's the highlight of every meeting, is the Mandana Bliss Award.
So at this time, I would like to ask that Blair Casey, who is a fourth grade student at Roosevelt, to come forward with Amanda Hegg, who is a fourth grade teacher at Roosevelt. So we are honoring Amanda today, and Blair is going to say a few words about Miss Hegg. You got it.
Hi, this is Blair from Roosevelt Elementary School. I am happy to say that I want to nominate Miss Hegg for Mandana Bliss Award because Miss Hegg is always helpful, brave, and also very kind. Also, that is always why I think she should win this award. So have a great day. Also, Miss Hegg, thank you for being the best teacher ever. From Blair Elson Casey.
Great job. Would you like to get in a picture with us?
Can my sister come in?
Absolutely. Yeah, and your principal. How about that? Let's come up here. Oh,
Congratulations.
yes, thank you so much.
Thanks for leaving.
Thank you.
Congratulations, Officer.
Congratulations.
Congratulations. Awesome job. Yep, thank you. Very deserving.
Congratulations once again, Amanda, and also Blair, thank you for that nice presentation, nice job. At this time, we have our public comments. Do we have anybody?
We did not.
No one read? Did we get any mailed ones or anything,
No
emails?
emails.
All right, good. Okay, so we'll move on to presentations. My good neighbor and student scholar extraordinaire cannot be here because Ms. Haas is studying for a test, which is the best place to be. So we wish her the best of luck. Not that she'll need it. At this time, we'll have Sarah O'Donnell, their communication report.
Hello. All right, your communications report for January 2025. Maybe.
Is it going?
I don't think so.
No.
I can just talk about it too. Information is included in your packets. A few highlights for you. Media coverage and public relations. We were able to share 7 press releases throughout January, really highlighting some student activities. Thank you very much, as always, for helping us to host the art show. The district art show was definitely a highlight for January. It's really cool to be kind of a fly on the wall taking those photos because we get to see just like they come in with groups of, I mean, just their whole family is here, generations are here supporting them. So it's really nice to be able to highlight that in the building and nice to get a little bit of coverage off of that as well. Also want to mention, we did have Coach Kevin Hopp named the 23-24 Boys Cross Country National Coach of the Year. So certainly a huge award for Kevin and just a really great reflection of the good work that that program does with our students. Looking at engagement across our social and digital channels, our total audience was up slightly, just under 1% increase, as well as an increased jump for Instagram, followers of of 3%. We had 266 impressions, which was a 42% increase from the previous month, and 19,000 engagements, which was a 16% increase in engagements over the previous month. So very nice to see that continued engagement there. Looking at website and digital engagement, this is really the first month we've been able to have metrics for the new website. So we're really comparing month over month. It's not going to be a real fair comparison of month over month until we have 2 months of that data. So this would be comparing December to January. We did see a rise in total visits of about 3.9%. A metric that I'm really interested in is that average time on page. So we saw that increase significantly, over 200%, which just means people are either finding what they need, they're staying there a little bit longer, they're able to navigate that a little bit better. So we'll continue to monitor that pretty closely. Our top 3 most visited pages are that district homepage, the staff portal login, and then the SPASH homepage. User and experience feedback, we'll still continue to monitor that very closely. We had 6 feedback submissions through kind of that website form that we have on there, primarily still, some missing information that folks have noticed, broken links that folks have noticed. And we continue to work to get that staff directory link between our HR system and the website up to date. So we continue to work on that. Key improvements, we continue to adjust that navigation based on feedback as things come up, and we were able to do a Tier 3 banner update to really focus on just some navigational pieces once you get kind of into those pages. So not on that first page, but in the second and third pages. So we're hopeful that that will help folks as they continue to navigate through that website. Next areas of focus for the website will be taking a look at that navigation for mobile users. So the site is responsive and does move to mobile, but we want to take a look just to make sure that really is working. And then we're continuing to improve that homepage feature, specifically information in one of the panels. So we'll have an update hopefully in the next few months for that. Taking a peek at special campaigns and projects we've been working on, our 4K registration awareness campaign is really in the middle and the thick of it. This year we're also starting a survey for that to try to capture some information of those folks before it's time to register. That's our hardest part from communication standpoint. When we communicate, we're not really sure where those 4K families are or who they are. They've not typically engaged with our system before, so giving them an opportunity to sign up for reminders, key dates, that's been going really well. And then we'll continue to push just information. We do have an open house this Thursday at all sites. We're encouraging families to pick maybe 1 or 2 sites that they really want to take a look at. It'd be really hard to get to all 17. But then we also have virtual tours available on the website. So folks, there's one they weren't able to get to or really wanted to see one and aren't able to attend on Thursday. All that information is available online. And then registration for 4K for next year will open on February 24th. We also had a Canva design training for folks. We had over 30 people participate, so that was really exciting. And we went through and claimed all of our Google business profiles. This was something that has been on my to-do list, but just hasn't risen to the top until we switched over our website, and all of the website configurations were inaccurate on our Google business listing. So that became a very top priority. A huge thank you to tech, who took about a half a day to make that happen with me. And then just looking ahead to our key deliverables for February, we'll continue to do our special event communication and coverage, covering Black History Month activities this month, Panther Red and Black Week, and some random acts of kindness projects that we know are happening, 4K registration awareness campaign. We will do the school board self-evaluation survey again, looking probably in March, and then the school climate surveys preparation for those for delivery. We'll deliver the mid-year update and then continue to promote our strategic communication across social, newsletters, and district communication channels.
Are there any questions for Ms. O'Donnell? Questions going once, twice? Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate all the work you do. You do a wonderful job.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thanks, Sarah.
At this time, we'll have our superintendent's report with Corey.
Sure. So congratulations to the boys hockey team and swim team. They are conference champs. So wanted to say congrats to both of those programs. Also, our pom and dance team qualified for state. So congratulations to the pom and dance team. Congratulations to student Megan Yang, who won the Central Wisconsin Symphony Annual Concerto Competition. She is a very, very, very talented musician. Not only does she play the piano, but she also plays the violin and has won many awards. So congratulations to Megan. We've had some donations to our schools in the last month. We had a $15,000 donation from Power Engineering to our CTE program. So thanks to that organization. And Key Mobility donated 6 wheelchairs to our schools. So again, we continue to see community partners supporting our schools each and every month. Just again, wanted to mention a couple things that Sarah pointed out. Point for the Future open house is Thursday, February 13th from 4 to 6. Registration for 4K begins on February 24th. Crossing Guard Week is February 17th through the 21st. National School Counselor Week is February 3rd through February 7th, so that happened last week. Governor Evers has proclaimed that February 2025 is Career and Technical Education Month. And then we've got parent-teacher conferences coming up for our elementary students. On Monday from 11 to 7 are parent-teacher conferences for the elementary students. And then February 27th from 4 to 8, we also have conferences. February 21st is an e-learning day. The board is going to take a tour of the Ameta Center on March 4th at 2 o'clock. So please show up for that if you are able and willing to be there. And then I wanted to take just a couple minutes to allow board members that went to the convention to share out anything that they learned from the convention. And I know G attended a session recently where he had learned some information that's legislative in nature. So let's start with the convention and then transition right into the legislative slides that G wants to share.
I can start.
Okay.
On I went to a how to read data session. Two people were very knowledgeable and on this, and I was surprised. It was mostly about the report card. Those numbers don't mean what you think they mean. You got to really, you got to dive in deep, find out what they are, and sometimes it's difficult to understand even after somebody explains it to you. But there was a lot of rancor amongst all the people there. And then afterwards, I went by in the exhibition hall and I saw Jeremy Beal, I think his last
CISA
name.
5?
And the lady with him, Mrs. Fish, I don't remember her first name.
Heather.
Had these, so the data was incredibly hard, and what's the WISE dash is the thing that's made to correlate it all, and it's very difficult to use. So Jeremy and Heather had designed a program to distill all that into easily readable graphs, and he showed me one, and it was at a glance you could tell what it was trying to tell you in true numbers. It's coming out in the spring, and hopefully that will allow us to make more sense of the numbers we get.
Good. Thank you, G.
Thanks, G, for that clarification.
Anyone else?
I guess I'll just note, I was doing the timing for the delegate assembly, and this year, there are probably more call to questions than I've ever seen. The event went on
Oh, really?
for about 2.5 hours, and it just made me realize, WASB represents every district in the state of Wisconsin, And we are a very diverse group, you know, both in terms of size of districts, location of districts, wealth of districts. And it was just very interesting to hear all of the different viewpoints. You know, I mean, people run for the board because they want to help. They want to help kids. They want to help schools. But we don't always all agree exactly on how that happens. And I thought that was just incredibly, you know, visible there at that meeting. So
Interesting.
it was interesting.
Next, Chris, do you want to put up the slide deck? Oh, you've got it up.
Okay, since I am the legislative liaison to the board, I thought I'd do my job for once. I went to the legislative update, Chris Kulo and, what's the other guy's name? Martin? I don't know his first name. David,
Yeah,
okay.
David.
We're giving this presentation, and it was about 27, 30 slides long, and I pulled out 4 or 5 of them.
9 of them.
I pulled out 4 or 5 that I thought contained information as we go into the biennium, budget biennium, that's a nice word, and so that we could see real information before rumors got a hold of things. So I thought it would be nice, Corey's allowing me to put this up. You can see what this is. This compares us to where we are now. We were 11th in the nation in per pupil spending 22 years ago, and now, as of 2020, we're 25th. So we're falling, and in fact, I think they said we've fallen more than any other state. Okay, so go to the next slide. This is a measure of how far we've fallen behind inflation. That red mark is how much we're behind inflation. It's about $3,500. That if we would have followed inflation from about 2010, we were tied to inflation till about the mid-90s, and then they broke it off. If we would have followed inflation, we would have been spending about $3,500 more per student than we do now. That's what that big red area is. So go ahead to the next one. This from, I think this slide is upside down personally. It shows, I wanted to ask, we spend about $11,700 per student right now?
11,333.
Okay, so we're getting 325 more next year. So we're in the bottom 3.8% of school districts in the state in spending.
Yep.
Even after the $14 million referendum, we're still at the bottom. It's just incredible. The state average is, the average is about 13.3. We're about $2,000 below that. And then the highest is 32,000, and do you know who that is? Who spends 32,000 per?
I don't
I
know
don't
who
know
that
who that
is.
is either.
Be like Washington County or something, or I mean,
Could be
way up by
Door County.
Door County, something like that. That's incredible. So you can see where we sit in the spectrum of states, of districts as far as spending money. So go ahead to the next one.
Can you go back to that last one? Space age. The lowest was 11,341. So there's a discrepancy someplace. Not that I'm trying to split,
No.
$8, but
Tom, are we 11,333? Yes. Do you know why this would be the lowest at 341? Right. So I don't know what that is, but I'll look that up, but we are 11,333.
okay. I'm just,
Yep.
Since they raised the minimum, we got raised, but we're at the minimum.
The most important thing is we are definitely
Oh,
in the
In the
lowest.
lowest.
But yep,
We
And
could be the lowest.
it could be.
Yeah, could be.
Well,
Yeah.
and I think it's important for our community to understand that that's not by our choice. That is a result of the state coming in and freezing those levies in the early 90s. And at the time, our district was a responsible district in terms of spending. And so they froze everybody where they were at. And so each year when the increase occurs, it's
Yep.
on your base. So, you know, it's the saying of the rich getting richer and the poor getting poorer. But, you know, in terms of that spread,
Right.
that's what's happening. And that's why the state is like, what, like 3 or 4 years ago, they put the minimum at, what was it, 10,000? And now they've moved it up to 11,000 because those of us at the 3.8% at the bottom just keep falling further and further behind.
Right.
It's just a fundamentally inequitable funding system within our state.
And I'm going today at the Capitol, and can I say that now?
Yeah.
About the question? On March 12th, and if anybody wants to go or shoot me questions, and we may have time at the next board meeting to put the board voice behind it if we want to. But I'll be asking questions, probably some of the same ones that I asked before. I'm gonna ask for Vinnie Marisi and Pat Teston, you know, things like this. I mean, we passed $14 million referendum, and we're still at the bottom.
Right, right,
What do you gotta do to get
right.
in the middle? You know, anyway, here's the next one. This is the special ed funding is in green compared to the cost. This is a reimbursement rate, and we're last year, or 22, 23, we're at 31.9% of total cost. It was actually down to 25% at one time. Yeah, way back, a few years back, but that's one of the questions I intend to ask our representatives again is, why is that? I asked it last time, really didn't get an answer. I ask it again, and a lot of people are asking it.
Didn't it change to 33%?
That's what it's supposed to be, but it's
Oh,
not.
okay.
Yeah. It, in actuality, it's just, and it went up, you know, so. Anyway, that's one of the questions I'm gonna ask our representatives about. So, this one, this is saying that our taxes here in the state of Wisconsin, income tax is at the lowest level since 1970. Our economy's doing great. But we are, as in education, we're not sharing in that. Okay, so that's why I put this up. The number one is that we're at the lowest rate in 54 years for our tax rate. So in case anybody asks. Okay, so DPI budget request, this is what they're looking for. And Chris Kulo, the legislative liaison, was going over this. Those are the special ed categorical aid numbers that they are asking for. I asked him why 90%, why not 100%? And he said right now, private schools and voucher schools are funded at 100% up to a certain level where it's capped, and then it's 90 after that. So they're probably compromised a little bit, and they're asking for 90. But they asked for 90% last time, too. You can see the per pupil increase that the DPI is asking for. It's above the 325 that we've gotten last year and this year, I think, right? And the one that Evers did his veto thing and put in for 400 years, we get a 325 increase. It's already not enough. So, and that's in the courts right now to decide whether he can do that or not. And Representative Voss has said, go ahead to the next, I think he says it on the next one. Well, Representative Voss said that if that $325 increase is declared constitutional, everything's off the table for schools. That's all you're getting. That's what he said. Let's see. So this is what the legislature is proposing for schools. The cell phone ban, billing access, cursive writing, computer science graduation requirement, go to the next one.
There's a civics one too.
There's a lot of them right now that are pending, yes.
Hiring of retired teachers, they want to make it, because at one time they'd said you couldn't come back unless you're like half-time or something. Now they want to change that and make it a lot easier. And continued office of school safety funding. And I had the opportunity to talk to a person at the exhibit hall that represented this office. And she detailed a lot of the things they did during the year, and I think that was very impressive to the legislature, and they said, yes, we want to do this. So go to the next one.
I think that's it, G.
Okay, well, that's it.
Thank you, G.
Thank you, G.
I had a question.
Yeah.
Did you catch anywhere in there, did they talk about the rationale for the mandate for the cursive writing? What's behind that?
I didn't, there was no talk about a mandate, it was just, this is what the legislature wanted to make sure we're teaching cursive writing in the schools.
Okay.
I didn't hear anything else besides that.
As to why they wanted it? I was just
No,
curious.
no, not as to why,
Okay, thank you.
sorry.
Okay, that's it.
Does anyone have any questions of Corey? Going once, going twice. Thank you, Corey. Thanks for your hard work. This time, I'm looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved. Good.
Roll call.
Yeah, it was good.
Can I comment on it at all?
Yeah.
After you do, oh, you got to approve it and then?
Well, so
And you have to pull it out.
what we typically do is if there's one of the three items that you want to comment on, that we
Pull it out.
pull it out as a courtesy.
All right. Is there one that you wanted to comment on?
Oh, just on the board, because we had gotten an update on conversation we had in the last meeting on minutes that we had, public may not know that when we talked about the wellness, I brought up that the kids who qualify for free meals and reduced meals all get their lunch fully free, and there was pushback on what I said, and that was only for breakfast. And then we got clarification that not only does that for breakfast, but it's all kids get breakfast. And for lunch, what I said was correct, that if you have free lunch, you get it, and if you have reduced, the district picks up the rest, and so they're free too.
Correct.
I just wanted to make sure, because that doesn't come out otherwise, and we get that update in an email, and the public doesn't hear that and doesn't know that, and they think that what we said at the last meeting is the truth, and it was not accurate, so I just wanted to clarify that so that people could hear that.
Yeah, thanks for the clarification, Jim.
Can we ask further on Jim's portion?
I'm not on
I don't know where that is actually under consent. I don't, is there an item that you want to pull?
Well, it was just a part of the the minutes,
was in the
and that it
minutes.
was not technically, I mean, it's part of the last meeting, and it's part of the, wasn't even addressed in the minutes, it was part of the
Wasn't called out
wellness.
in the minutes.
It was part of the wellness things of the minutes, but
I
it
think
deserves
you
to
made
be
your
said.
clarification, which is appreciated and I think appropriate. But this time, I think we're going to roll call vote on the consent agenda
Okay.
because that is not, that particular thing is not really an issue that we're bringing forth.
Okay.
The clarification was important and I appreciate it. But let's go ahead and have a
Okay.
roll call vote for the consent agenda.
Ms. Bushman?
Her mic's off.
Yes.
Mr.
Yes.
Mr. Robbie?
Yes.
Mr. Pope?
Yes.
Ms. Portson?
Yes.
Ms. Erler?
Yes.
Mr. Shader?
Aye.
Mr. Summers?
Yes.
Mr. Lepak?
Yes?
I thought Mr. Shader seconded it, and I thought Mr. Lepak motioned it.
I motion.
He motion.
Motion?
Will
Second, it was
Jim
backwards.
second.
and Jim second.
Will and Jim.
Okay.
Okay, thank you very much. And again, thank you, Jim, for that clarification. At this time, we'll have a report of the business services, and I think, Barb, you chaired that meeting? Barb? There she is.
I am back. We had kind of a short meeting, but a valuable one. first, Beth had talked about our turnover rate, and I think she's on the agenda next, so you'll be hearing her presentation. Then Mike took us through some information about the bills, the financial statements, the second Friday of January counts, and the exception report. Those were all information only. And that's what our whole meeting was about.
Thank you, Barb. And the next agenda item is Beth's turnover report. Unfortunately, Beth is not feeling well today. So it's very detailed. She didn't get any questions after committee, but she said if committee members did have questions, just to reach out to her and she'd be happy to answer them.
Can I just say that the exception report
Yep.
that Mike spent a ton of time doing, I thought distilled a lot of information very quickly, answered many questions, and if anybody here did not get to see it, they should really ask to see it. It really is a nice, hard work that really answers a lot of questions.
I agree, G. Mike does a phenomenal job with that report, and it
Oh,
does.
that Mike?
Yep.
Okay.
So
Go ahead. I'm sorry,
I
go
guess
ahead.
I just want to note, I mean, it's a great report that Beth provided. I do want to note that our current teacher turnover, if anybody's listening tonight, our current teacher turnover rate is 10%, including retirements, and 7% if we're excluding retirements. We also just had a number of retirements. I think 4 or 5 of the people who are going to be retiring at the end of the school year have been with us in a range from 25 to 32 years. So we're talking about incredibly long-term employees. I want to note that, I mean, 10% is lower than what we've seen, and it's wonderful. We're seeing that continue to trend downward, and that's amazing. It's still a good number of teachers, especially in our climate where there just aren't as many people going into education. So I really appreciate the effort that Beth and her department have been making. I mean, they have been really, really ramping up recruitment efforts, very creative, and a lot of work behind it. And then I think also the board has stepped up to provide some additional support in a number of ways to staff. And Beth's team has been incredibly supportive of our staff. So we do have some problem areas still in our food service. If there's anybody out there in the community, they're great jobs, and we would strongly encourage you, food service bus drivers, our EAs, but I just, it's a good trend that we're seeing, and Beth and her team, they're just doing a wonderful job.
Well said.
If you've ever seen them in action at the job fair at the university, that team, they practically run out and grab them around the neck and say, come on over here. We want to hire you, and they really do a job on them. They really do.
They do a nice job.
Well, I'd just like to echo some of what was said. I don't know if we should be grabbing people by the head and dragging them in. I hope there's better ways.
That may be why we're not filling.
I hope there's better ways we can get them to come to our district. But it's seriously, the retention of the recruitment and retention of staff is critical for any school district, and it's critical for our school district. And those numbers, they're still big numbers, and that's still a lot of turnover. But I appreciate the fact that the administration and this board and Beth and her department have really aggressively looked at ways in which we can do better. And I don't think we're 100% there yet. I think we have more to do. And I know that Corey and her staff are working on ways in which we are going to be able to reward our staff so that they are taken care of, and that our staff will stay rather than looking around and hopping around, that we get great staff and we keep great staff, because that is the key of everything that happens in this district. It happens in that classroom with those, and in the buildings with those professionals. So I'm glad to see, and I was also glad in the report that she did list the things that they've been doing over the last 2 or 3 years, and it's a good start. Again, I think we have a ways to go, and I think a lot of people would agree. But thank you for all the efforts from the administration and the board. Any other questions on that report? Going once? Going twice? Okay. At this time, Chair Pope, if you'd like to review what took place in educational services.
Yeah, we had 3 things, and I think several are going to be here tonight. We're going to be kind of redoing what we had there on the reading, ELA reading adoption of materials, summer school fees, and the revised secondary safety memo. And we're going to go run right through them, right?
Correct. And the secondary safety updates was a new item that we just brought here to full board. We did not bring through educational services, but we did have an update on a junior high schedule change and covered some of the highlights around the implementation of learning centers. We did not bring that forward to full board, but certainly can revisit that topic again at a later time. But thanks, G. That leads us into our first item, which is an action item. This is a very big night for some folks that are here in the room and myself. This is the final sprint here for completing the process of our ELA resource adoption for kindergarten through grade 6. Several members of our 21-member vetting team are here. I'll ask them to step up to the podium, and before they begin on their slide, if they could just introduce themselves by sharing their name and their role in the district. And with that, I will pass it to Darla. You can try the clicker. I don't know if it's going to work or not. We'll see. If not, I'll click for you.
Nope.
Nope.
Okay.
Awesome, thank you. I'm Darla Panoski. I am the Elementary Curriculum and Instruction Coordinator, and very happy to be here tonight. I'm going to start off just talking briefly about our first 2 meetings that we had as a team. Our ELA vetting team, like Chris said, has 21 members from our district. On August 26th, our very first meeting, we took a look at the rubric that was put together. We finalized it. Everyone came to agreement that this is what all the components that we wanted to evaluate resources from. We also then was able to see really great reading from Jill Dickerson, and then Jessica York from Great Minds, which encompasses Wit and Wisdom and Geodes. Once the presentations were done, the team had an opportunity to ask questions of all the 3 programs and complete that rubric. At the end of the day, it was really a great way to wrap things up. The team each completed a rubric. We also discussed strengths and barriers of each of those programs.
Good evening. I'm Molly Demrow. I'm the principal at Jefferson Elementary. We had 2 building principals on the team, so thank you for having us. Our next meeting was on September 30th, and we had a presentation from Kim Romaine from EL Education by Open Up. We followed the process that Darla just shared at each of our meetings when we were looking at the different resources. So our team had the opportunity to talk with and ask Kim Romaine any questions that they had, and then we also had access to the resources. We again filled out the rubric, and we had that collaboration time at the end. Again, that was a key component of the process, was being able to talk amongst the team. We all come from different, we all have different positions in the elementary realm, and so it helped to hear from, the perspective of our 6th grade teachers and our kindergarten teachers, so that portion of the meetings were always very valuable. Then on October 28th, and November 11th, we had a presentation, 2 different presentations from CKLA Amplify with Chrissy Fisher and Jennifer Lamb. We again had the opportunity to ask questions. We did have 2 different meetings because 3rd edition materials were presented that weren't available for us to view at the first meeting. So we did have the opportunity to look at rubrics and have that collaboration time again. So the first meeting was their 2nd edition materials, and we had the second opportunity to meet with them to review the 3rd edition materials.
So on, also,
That's
I'm
your
like,
cue, Darla.
Darla. Also on November 11th, what we did on that day was to, we took a look at our rubrics of the 3 resources and had a really good discussion on what we liked, what we didn't like, strengths and barriers. And then we voted anonymously by Google Form. We wanted to narrow it down to our top 2 choices. And as you can see on this graph that Wit and Wisdom with Geodes and Really Great Reading and CKLA and ELA Amplify were our 2 top choices.
Good evening, I'm Carrie Warzella. I teach first grade at Kennedy Elementary School. The next step in our process was visiting the schools and seeing the resources in action, teachers teaching it and students learning. So our first visit was to the Wausau School District. We spent the morning in a kindergarten classroom, and then we were able to sit down and discuss pros and cons with the kindergarten teacher. And then we traveled to another school, and we saw a team of 3 third grade teachers, and we kind of went between the 3 rooms, and then we were able to sit down with them as well and discuss their pros and cons. I'm not going to read the list, but up there are the things that were favorable from the programs. The next slide then talks a little bit about their concerns. One of the things that they struggled with was it was 3 resources to fit all of the needs to fit the language arts curriculum. So they had to have 3 separate resources, which was challenging for the teachers to navigate through 3 resources in their teaching day just for English language arts. So that was the main concern. Very time consuming, and it was a lot of teacher prep. The third grade teachers had been teaching it for 3 years already, and they were still feeling the challenge of a lot of prep, even after 3 years, which was kind of a red flag for us. And some of the other things were listed as well. So that kind of summarizes the Wausau visit.
Good evening. My name is Sarah Champeau. I am a reading specialist at Roosevelt Elementary. And talking about our second opportunity, our second site visit in December was to the New Berlin School District. We were met with a very gracious and eager group of educators who were really wanting to share their experiences with us. Some of the pros that we talked about with those teachers and that we observed on that day: rich vocabulary and strong comprehension skills being utilized, writing that was happening every day. There was a lot of student engagement that was evident to us and that the teachers were seeing and experiencing in their lessons. That they had strong teacher presentation slides that were very easy for teachers to implement as they were using the program. And that CKLA has a intentional design for 6th grade, which is specifically designed for those middle school learners, a little bit different from K through 5, to build those critical thinking skills as they move into that middle school realm. Some of the concerns that we saw and talked about, those topics being a bit tough or advanced, was discussed as a potential concern. The assessments were seen as very intense, certainly something that would require stamina of students. And 6th grade, in our discussion with them, mentioned that their grammar and spelling component felt a bit incomplete. And we did note that when we were visiting at that time, seeing CKLA Amplify, they were using the 2nd edition. Some of those things, like concerns that we saw that day, were addressed then in the 3rd edition. So things like there not being an answer key for 6th grade, or things that have evolved in the edition that would be available to us this fall.
Good evening, I'm Taylor Nelson. I'm a 5th grade teacher at Plover Whiting. In January, we were able to have the representatives from both the companies come back in and dive deeper into each of those resources. And then we had plenty of time to ask further questions about those. Those of us that were able to go on the site visits were able to share out those observations and express those pros and cons to each of those resources. And then we were able to take our final vote. And our final vote did result in the selection of CKLA and ELA by Amplify.
Thank you all. This slide, I'm not going to click into the two resources there, but certainly for any community members that might be joining, this presentation can be added to board docs. If anyone had an interest in looking at an overview of either program for K-5 or the separate supporting program that's designed for sixth grade, those are live links available on this slide that walk you through the primary components of each of the programs. I want to talk a little bit about financing this purchase. We've been keeping the board apprised of the significant cost that would come with the purchase of this resource. It's also, I think, before we talk about this, important to acknowledge that our district has not made a purchase of a universal ELA resource for over 20 years. And we're also looking at pricing that covers a 6-year contract. So we're looking at some large numbers here. Since our Educational Services Committee meeting, also there were some updates just in terms of eligibility for that 50% reimbursement through the Department of Public Instruction. When we had initially done the review, we had reviewed the second edition materials as the team has shared. Those second edition materials are on the 50% eligibility list created by the DPI for 24-25 or 25-26. When the third edition materials became available, Darla and I both questioned whether or not we should be concerned about eligibility for reimbursement with the third edition. At that time, we were assured by our sales representative that they were prepared already to submit the third edition materials for review, and that they would be submitted in April. The review window would close in June, and they expected that the materials would be on the approved list for 25-26. I confirmed that with the Office of Literacy at the Department of Public Instruction, and we proceeded with the understanding that our materials would be eligible for the 50% reimbursement. Interestingly enough, one of our board members had a conversation with someone who sits on the governance committee or council for the Office of Early Literacy and indicated that we should confirm whether or not the third edition would indeed be on the eligible list. I was able to do that. We did learn that, in fact, the review window that opens in April and closes in June is actually determining which resources or programs will be on the 26-27 eligible list. So certainly we could spend time really focusing on the miscommunication that occurred. I certainly could self-preserve in this moment, and I could throw our sales rep under the bus and say, this was all her fault. And the truth is, I operated under the exact same logic that she was. The window opened in April, it closed in June. It seemed to make perfect sense that that would be determining which programs would be on the resource list for 25-26, not for the year ahead of that. So ultimately, in the end, we would have been making this decision anyway. So this third edition CKLA materials were not done. They were not completed in time to be on the eligibility list for 25-26. They just weren't completed. So we would have been making a decision about whether or not we would purchase a resource that was being phased out or discontinued, or would we be making a decision about purchasing a resource that would be the newest or most revised or current edition, knowing one is eligible for reimbursement, one is not. So we're still faced with the same choice that we're faced with today. In terms of the third edition or the most current edition, the total cost for our 6-year contract, including all teacher and student materials, is $1.27 million. The student materials that we would fund through the $5.25 million in year 2 referendum funds would cover that larger cost. We do have $150,000 in our current educational services budget to be able to cover the cost of teacher materials so that those could be ordered immediately and we could have those available to teachers prior to them leaving for the school year in June for those who have an interest in beginning to review them or starting to plan. So this is the edition 3 or the most current edition. I did go back and ask for a separate quote on addition 2 to say if we were eligible for the reimbursement, what would that cost look like? She was able to work through that, and this was the exchange of, I think, about maybe 12 emails over the weekend. But we finally landed at a place where we had current numbers. Interestingly enough, the second edition is more expensive than the first edition because there are more the second edition is more expensive than the third edition because there are more student materials. So each one of the units had a separate volume workbook for all students. And in the third edition, those were combined into just one. So in print costs alone, it is significantly lower in the third edition than it was in the second. So the overall cost of the second edition, which would be eligible for 50% reimbursement, is $1.63 million. We would finance or we would cover $1.48 million or approximately 1.5 with those year 2 referendum funds. Again, the $150,000 that we're able to cover for the teacher materials would come out of our current ed services budget. The potential reimbursement, if we were to submit, would be approximately $483,000 if we were to get the full 50%. So we can only submit for reimbursement on K-3 materials because that's all that's covered in the Act 20 legislation. That cost is about $966,000 or $965,000, and half of that comes out to about $483,000. We've always assumed that we would submit for 50%, knowing we likely wouldn't get the full 50%, but we would certainly try. So the potential reduced cost could be about $1.14 million. If you're doing the quick math here, what is the difference between edition 3 in terms of total cost to the district without reimbursement or total cost to the district with reimbursement? 1.14, and the difference between 1.27, so we're talking about $130,000. So $130,000 is the difference between the most current or revised edition or the edition that's currently being phased out or is currently being discontinued. I would like to take this time to also thank those vetting members and extend a special thanks. I have, in many instances, I've expressed the amount of time and effort that has gone into this process. This has been going on for about 6 months. They have all spent an extraordinary amount of hours of their lives reviewing materials, filling out a really long rubric, and writing a lot of really specific questions, and leafing through pages of teacher materials and clicking through pages of online digital resources to land in the place where we are today. So I'm incredibly proud of this group, and I'm so grateful for their willingness to work alongside me in making this final choice.
Jen had a question.
I think she was just clapping.
She raised her.
She raised
Oh,
her.
so I was just clapping, but I want to say thank you because I actually had teachers in the district and the primary buildings reach out, just so excited that we are going to have a universal, ELA curriculum. And this is very much aligned to our board goals, our district goals on enhancing student achievement. So I'm very excited should this be approved. And thank you all for all of your dedication and your passion. I appreciate it, and I can't wait for even my son to use it. Thanks.
And that concludes with the recommendation, which I'll leave there, which would be to approve the purchase of the third edition of CKLA. I can entertain questions.
Sure, thanks. Just real quick, first of all, I'm very, very pleased. I think most people are that we're going to have a consistent program, not only for consistency, but also for resources for our teachers. What's going to be in place to ensure that people are using it consistently across the board? And second to that, this isn't the first time we've had a consistent program, and there's a tendency that we're all yay, hey, and then things fall apart, and then 15 years later, it's like, oh, we're all using different things. What's in place that we can kind of tighten that a little bit?
So in terms of implementation, we do have part of this quote also, I did not detail that out, but includes a significant professional development component that spans the entire 6 years of implementation. Those professional development sessions will include whole group sessions by grade band, so K2, 3, 5, and grade 6 separately. They will also be supported by coaching sessions where representatives from the company will come in and they'll actually observe and plan with teachers. So I would call that another accountability measure. Principals will also work through the process of their own leadership training as part of PD, or they'll identify look-fors that they'll be searching for when they're visiting classrooms and observing. So there certainly is an accountability measure there to ensure that, we're not, because all of a sudden it's difficult or time-consuming, we get to choose something else. Yeah, it's a good question.
Thank you. Are there other questions? Go ahead.
I'm just going to re-ask this. I asked this at the previous board meeting, and I just want to make sure that it's amply clear because we had talked about already cursive writing, and you had said that cursive writing was covered. You sent that in an email. I just want the community to know that that is something that is covered. But the depth of it, maybe can you address a little bit?
Sure. I can speak to it specifically, and I did have an opportunity to go back after your question at Ed Services, and it's introduced initially at the end of grade 2. There is not expectation for application at the end of grade 2, but grades 3, 4, and 5 all have a separate activity book that is included in our quote. It's not an extra or an add-on. And in every writing lesson, there is an expectation that students are applying what they're learning in terms of cursive writing. And they're practicing that on a consistent, ongoing basis. So I would call it quite in-depth, as a matter of fact. Even if I go back to my experience as a classroom teacher at primary, when I taught first grade and second grade, I would say that this is doing a much more intentional and systemic job teaching cursive procedures than what I've seen in the past. Yeah, I call it pretty comprehensive.
Meg?
So I guess I have a couple questions. My first question is, so we have a focused 6th grade component to this, but our 6th graders then leave us and they go to 7th grade. Have we taken a look at, and I know we've been focused on that junior high with respect to ELA and senior high. Did we take a look to see how this program kind of tailors and supports kids moving into those different programs at the other levels?
So I think, Meg, that will be some of the work that will have to begin once the final selection is made. Jackie Maybon, who's our curriculum coordinator for secondary, has been working really closely with our ELA teams, both at junior high and at high school. I think it will then be about looking at how we can create some alignment between that transition from CKLA Amplify to 7th grade in terms of what we're doing there. So that 7th grade curriculum is pretty well established at the junior highs. It would be about potentially what might we need to embed or infuse into the 6th grade experience to make that transition a little easier. So have we looked at it closely and do we have a plan? No, but do we know we need to have one? Yes.
Can I add to that, Chris?
Sure.
I'm Tessa Cashwaninger, 6th grade Kennedy. Over the past few years, 6th grade has been working with the junior high when it comes to science standards. Part of the writing component has been a CER, claim evidence reasoning. After looking at Amplify, that is something that is embedded within that program as well. So I was thinking the same thing. I feel it will transition to 7th grade very well. There's probably other components that we'll need to look at, but that is one that I was pretty comfortable at seeing.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tessa.
Any other questions or comments?
My other's just
Oh,
a
I'm sorry.
comment.
Go ahead.
I mean, it's just, again, I understand the state moves at the rate, or DPI moves at the rate it moves at. I mean, the legislature right now has not made any decisions. They also have this money, supposedly the money for the reimbursement is tied up. We're not sure whether any of that money is going to be available. The money is fundamentally inadequate to provide 50% reimbursement for districts across the state. That's just a reality. So I guess I never anticipated that any district was going to be getting 50%. And it just is frustrating that there are probably going to be districts in the state that are going to feel like they have to stick with an older version, in the short term, in the now, and then not have that opportunity to have the, reworked 3rd edition moving forward. I feel like we would be shooting ourselves in the foot, if we didn't continue to pursue and go with the 3rd edition. I just think that's a reality, and I'm just incredibly grateful to this community that they supported and passed this referendum, and that our district has the resources that allow us to have it be an easier choice, in my opinion, to stick with our plan and go with the third edition and recognize that it's going to cost us additional dollars over that 6-year period, but I just think it's the right way to go.
And maybe it won't cost us additional dollars.
maybe it
if-
won't.
If the state doesn't come through, which.
Right.
That's right.
Exactly.
Yeah, it might be,
I just have one more question. In reading through it, Wit and Wisdom provided some cross-curricular things. Does CKLA do any cross-curricular things to perhaps lighten the load less? I think it was in science that they had cross-curricular stuff with.
Social studies and science
Okay.
were really well reinforced, I would say, or supplemented as part of Wit and Wisdom. I don't know if maybe one of the vetting team members would like to just provide a little bit of context, maybe Taylor.
Yes, so CKLA, I am not the social studies or science expert in my grade level, but yes, CKLA, their units are surrounded with science and social studies topics. It's my understanding that a lot of those topics are pre-introduced in grade levels prior. So for example, I want to say it's the Revolutionary War is introduced in 4th grade, knowing that that's a 5th grade standard. So they're coming in with a lot of knowledge on the topic already into the next grade level.
Thanks,
Which is
Taylor.
good for testing.
That is, right.
Other comments, other questions? Yes, Jim.
And I mentioned this at the Ed Services meeting too. I found out that the vetting team, of course, did their due diligence and checked these numbers too. I went and looked at the 2 schools that they had been using, the programs that they were comparing, the Wit and Wisdom and the CKLA, and the one we're choosing, at New Berlin, their proficiency scores ran on average 80 to 90% in English, as opposed to where Wit and Wisdom was used, where it was 50 to 60, so they're running 30 points higher. And because of what G said earlier about the DPI's report card and how hard it can be to decipher, and plus they changed the parameters of it, so this was sort of a year 0, so these schools have both been using it for 3 years, so that's why I took it upon myself. I'm going to call the superintendent. He used to be a principal at Almond, local. He said, maybe you'll take my call. He called me back, and he said, I just wanted to know how much have they seen on their internals, because that's not on the state report card, really. He didn't give me the exact data. He just said, yeah, we've seen significant improvements using this program over the they've been using it for 3 years, so.
Good endorsement.
Yep.
Other questions or comments? Well, I want to thank our professionals for all the hard work they did and the rest of the members. It's a big undertaking and it's a big deal to all our educators. So thank you for all of what you've done and thank you for your presentation this evening.
Ditto. Thank you very much. I know it was a lot of work.
This time I'm looking for a motion to approve the purchase of the core knowledge language arts by Amplify curriculum as the universal core English language arts resource across all K-6 levels as presented.
Do we have to modify it to say version 3?
It's as presented.
Oh, okay.
The recommendation is.
It says 3rd edition.
It says 3rd edition in there, not in our board packet. So I just want it
Yeah.
just noted that it's
Sure.
3rd edition.
Sure.
I just want that noted, and I will make that motion.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alex.
Second.
Second.
Thank that's a little late.
Oh,
Too slow.
sorry, sick and slow, sorry.
Yeah. Well, at least you're awake. All those in favor? Or can we take a?
Do we need-
We
Can
don't
we
need to
do-
do roll call.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? All right, motion passes.
Thank you. Thank you all so much.
Thank you. Wonderful job.
Great job.
Thanks for taking time on your this evening.
You just have to come back one more time in March. I'm kidding.
Finally, I just wanted to say, finally, we have something,
Yep,
so.
that's great.
very
Yeah.
good.
Summer school fees?
Yes, I can take that one. So we did have a brief presentation on revisions to some summer school fees, as well as an overview of a proposed revision to summer school programming by way of the addition of hunter safety. And I'm going to pass that to Jeff and allow him and Carla Lockman to talk through those proposed changes.
So the first one that we had is some fee changes that I wanted to go through with the board. We have 2 fee increases. One of them is going to be for golf, and the other one is going to be for instrumental camps. Now, this was a change for those of you who are in Ed Services. In Ed Services, we had said instrumental camps and lessons. After having actually one of our community committee members bring it up, we went back, we talked to the instructors, we reviewed and reminded this has to be used for consumables. We talked through the idea of lessons only being once a week for 20 minutes. And the decision was made that we remove that fee. That fee was not going to be needed, so it's instrumental camps only. And it's select, there's 2 instrumental camps we will not have that for, and those are listed on there. Both of these are for materials. For the golf court or the golf class, if any of you guys know Vanessa or Janessa Reed, she buys lots of stuff, and she had said that she was buying a ton of materials out of pocket. So we went through with her and identified some changes in that one. That's all for consumables. For the camps, it is all for sheet music for the students to be able to take with them. So again, another consumable. I'm also happy to report that we do have one reduction. So for our UWSP camps, the cost for that has gone down. We've seen that we no longer need some of the consumables that we have used in the past. So that is a reduction that you'll see. And then the next one, I'm gonna actually turn it over to Carla. This is about a new offering we're gonna have. I did wanna let the group know that we have been in contact. One of the questions that was raised was insurance. With the example Carla's been gonna be talking about. We have been in contact with our insurance company. And I can very safely say we've got some work left to do, but there is nothing that he identified that is going to impede our ability to do this at all. So I'll turn it over.
Can I ask a question before you leave the podium?
Nope, I want to let Carla talk.
Well, I'm going to ask it anyway. You said that it's once, for instrumental camps, it's once a week for 20 minutes?
That's the lessons.
Yeah. That
Lessons.
doesn't sound like much. I mean, what if people want more?
They can sign up if there's openings, G, for multiple lessons, but lessons are done differently. They're in like 20-minute blocks, and then they fill those up based on teachers.
Yeah, I know, but what if your kid wants to play the violin a lot and they want to take lessons 3 times a week? Can they do that?
Well, it depends on how many instructors we can get, G.
Really, is that the problem?
Yeah.
So hopefully.
Yep.
Would they pay more for more lessons then?
If they register for multiple lessons, they're going to pay for each one of those separately.
Carla.
Question, Carla. Hunter
Hey,
safety.
everyone. Yeah, so I'm Carla Lackman from Boston School Forest, and one of the things that has been suggested to us in the recent past was to offer DNR safety classes through the Boston School Forest, and we do outdoor environmental education and outdoor skills and conservation. And personally, I noticed a need for that because we really struggled with getting my daughter signed up for hunter's education, and finally, when she was 14, we found a class that was a good fit for us. And so we are looking at offering a hunter education class as part of summer school the first week of August 4th through the 8th, just in the mornings, and offer it for students ages 11 and up, so I think it's 6th grade and up, and we would cap that at 12. It would run just in the mornings, not to exceed 19 hours. Once I started asking the question, like, does anybody else do this? Yes, the answer is yes. Lots of school districts do this, including Two Rivers, Reedsville, Pulaski, Lena, Oconto Falls, Shawano, Lutheran, Gillette, and Delavan actually has an agri-science class that's all the natural resources DNR safety classes in a 1-semester class, which I thought was really great. So for this summer, I'd really like to start with the hunter education safety class, and then move forward in the future with possibly adding on an ATV, UTV safety class. I talked to Ryan Hansen, who is a teacher at Two Rivers, and they just started a summer school class last year. He was able to answer lots of my questions, and then also hooked me up with Kayla Sass, who is the DNR education coordinator for out of the Green Bay area, Northeast Wisconsin. She was excellent information as well. And they have a trailer for hunter education classes that we currently have reserved for that week of August, just on the chance that this works out. And it includes everything you need to run a hunter education class, including firearms that are real firearms, but the firing pin has been removed and welded over, so they are no longer working firearms, and then the dummy ammunition, so that students can still get the experience to match up the proper ammunition with the proper firearm and understand how actions work and how to practice the carries and how to safely move across fences and to load and unload in a safe situation. So it also has the materials for tree stands and the full body harnesses for being able to put up a tree stand, how to safely climb in a tree stand, how to navigate in and out of those. So I think all of those things are really, really exciting. It focuses heavily on safety. And so we would have a couple of options from there. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday would be lecture and also activity days at the Boston School Forest. Thursday, we would have an option to do a range day out at the Dewey. My husband's a game warden with the DNR and a firearms instructor for the state of Wisconsin. He offered to run the course for us if that is something that we chose to do. And then Friday would be the test out day, and I'd like to have a venison lunch for the kids too. I guess there are only 3 Hunter education classes offered right now through the DNR website. One of them is at Almond Bancroft High School Auditorium in March, the Isaac Walton League in April and August. Those are offered only on evenings and on Saturdays. So who would we get to teach this? Well, that also, I would prefer that we could find some of our own teachers, and there are several teachers who are really interested in teaching Hunter's education. They offer Hunter Education Instructor Training for free. It is a 3-year certification. We can host it at Boston School Forest. We've got a couple dates penciled in with Kayla in March and also in April. So we could offer that to our teachers, and then anyone else in the surrounding area, if they would like to teach it through Isaac Walton League or some other school district or something, we could offer that as well. And so we can host that here as well. So I guess what questions do you have for me?
Are there any questions, comments? Going once?
You sold us.
Twice?
We talked quite a bit.
Yes,
We talked
Okay.
about it at the meeting.
All right.
Hey,
Jen
this
wants to
is
say
long overdue.
Oh, I'm sorry, Jen.
I was just going to say thank you. I think this is, again, us hearing feedback from families and us working on this. So thank you, Carla, for all of the research that you have done. I think this will be a wonderful addition and offering to our students.
Great, thanks. Some of the parents at our baseball game were pretty excited about it too.
And what are you going to do when you have 100 kids that want to sign up?
Yeah, that's a great question. And actually, we thought about that too. So we're going to cap it at 12 because I feel like for especially this first year, we want to make sure that we have, like all of the supervision there and that kids understand this is a safety course. And everybody comes out to Boston School Forest to have fun. And I want this to I want them to look forward to it, but it also is a DNR safety course. So we want to just make sure that, and then could we offer it more often? Yeah, we could. We would just have to look at that down the road.
Thank you.
What was the cost on that again?
Oh, great question. And so there is no cost for the school district. There's a $10 cost for the DNR. So that's one thing the kids have to know. So there'll be good communication for the kids that do sign up during summer school. And that goes to the DNR. Right now in Portage County, there is a community foundation fund that can cover those. What I found, that $10 fee for any youth in Portage County seeking Hunter education, which is really cool that there's a donor fund set up for that. Right now, you have to coordinate that through the Sheriff's Department. So I have an email into Jason Meidel, who coordinates the safety programs through the Portage County, see if we can get in with that. Otherwise, it wouldn't be a school district fee. It would be to the DNR, and then any cost that we would have would be remitted out of that through the DNR.
Thank you.
And the teacher.
So I think the teacher, because it's like a summer school class, the teacher stipend would come out of whatever that looks like for summer school. Right.
Nice job. Thank you. Did you have another comment?
I was just going to let this group know, one of the things that Chris and I have talked with Carla about is we do have a couple of teachers that we think are interested in. What we've talked about is we'll agree to give them green sheet time for that day, honor their time, and just ask them that for the 3 years that they would go through this, that they would be available to Carla and to us to offer other courses. I think one of them also is very interested in offering up at SPASH, which I think would be really cool for some of our students who are a little bit older.
Oh, thank you very much.
Thank you.
At this time, I'm looking for a motion to approve the proposed summer school course fee adjustments and the addition of Hunter and ATV safety
It's not
courses
ATV, correct? It is just
So moved.
safety.
at this time.
It's just Hunter safety.
It's just Hunter safety, so we have to adjust.
Hunter safety,
Information.
okay, I'm going to read, that's good, no, thank you. Motion to approve the proposed summer school course fee adjustments and the addition of Hunter safety as presented.
So moved.
So moved.
There we go.
Second, do we have a second already?
These two.
Okay, nice job, Jen. All those in favor say aye.
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 Those
Aye.
opposed? Thank you. At this time, the next item is the revised secondary safety memo.
Great. Thanks, Dennis. And I'm going to pass this one over to Jeff. We had a update on this item at our board retreat on November 19th, if the board recalls that. And in the spirit of your wish is our command, you asked we would bring this back for an update in February. So we're going to share some updated data based on the cell phone revisions and restrictions that we implemented in the fall.
So just to kind of get started, I want to kind of go back to the background. Why did we do this? If the group kind of remembers what had happened in 23-24 is we were looking with our secondary principals, and we had really identified that we were seeing a disturbing trend in increase in bullying and fighting at our secondary sites. Our secondary group came together, and we really wanted to adjust some of our building practices. So obviously the biggest one we talked about was our cell phone policy. We talked about that at the beginning of the year. I did confirm with each of the buildings and looked at, they did a really concerted effort to make sure we communicated very rigorously to all of our parents and our students on what was going to be part of that. And that was done at our junior highs, that was done at CFC, that was done at PODS, that was done at SPASH. And then that was reinforced frequently in classrooms by teachers. It was reinforced during advisory lessons. And then they also sent out follow-up communication to families. And what I want to do with you is kind of present, okay, now that I gave you guys in October at the board retreat where our data was, where are we at now? So if you look at the table that we provided, you'll see, for example, we have the item that's not bolded. So we have 17 minor cell phone violations. That was mid-October.
1771.
Or excuse me, 71. Thank you, Alex. 71 minor cell phone violations. That was in October. What we did then is we took and looked at it for semester one. We compared last year to this year. We're down 155 from where we were. The next one you'll see is majors. We actually saw a slight increase when we looked in mid-October. When we looked at the full semester, we're down 11. So we're trending in the right direction there as well. SPASH did cell phone confiscations. So they did that every month. When I reported to you, we looked at September to October. We were at that time down 18%. If you look at the numbers by month, we have continued to drop month over month over month, which is awesome. Bullying and harassment data, we were down 7 for first quarter. When we look at comparing first semester, we're down 12. So we're right along, we're tracking that same reduction, which is great news. And then the next one, which is the one I'm really excited about because I know how hard our assistant principals work, is where we were at with majors. So when we look at majors and we compare semester one last year to this year, we're down 314 majors at our secondary sites. So those are major behavior incidents. The next part is attendance summary. So first semester, we are down 1,552 absences at the secondary level. That is partial day or full day. This is what we report to DPI.
Does that include like tardies or absences for 1 hour?
For 1 hour, Alex.
Okay.
Yes. Because if you miss all or part of a day to DPI, we report out on it. We're down 107 unexcused absences when we compare semester one of this year to semester one of last year. So from a school standpoint, Ben, PJs, and CFC all saw significant reductions. And then we saw slight increases at PODS and CFC. I think the biggest thing for me is I also want to know how are staff, how are leaders feeling about it? And universally, staff and leaders are saying this has been really, really a huge improvement. They're seeing better engagement in the classrooms. They're also seeing better peer-to-peer engagements in the hallway. Kids are talking to each other again in common spaces instead of taking their phones out. So, you know, I just wanted to be able to report out to this group and be able to hopefully answer any questions any of you might have.
Fantastic.
Yes.
Thanks, Jeff. And I think it's always really difficult to draw a direct parallel between any one input and the result, right? Is this the direct result of cell phone restrictions? Probably not, but we certainly believe that it's a significant contributing factor.
Is there some way we have to share this really good information directly with parents? Because most of them aren't going to watch this. And I think it's really important for us to say, this is what we did, and this is why we did it, and this is what we were hoping we would see, and this is what we're seeing, and we know it's because parents and students are taking it serious and it's helping everybody. I just think this is just really, really a good result that should be celebrated out.
I agree, Meg, that's a really good idea. We'll find a way to do
We
that.
could send something out on cell phones.
But they wouldn't like at around 11 o'clock, right?
Well, and then could we have a report, whether it's maybe at our retreat this summer or just a year-end
Year-end.
report? I think it would be another good thing to, hopefully, we'll continue the trend and be able to really celebrate it.
I know we didn't have any surveys and you were given anecdotal information, but I have to believe that instructors in the classroom are just really, really very, very pleased with this throughout the grade levels. I can't imagine how these teachers could be expected to have any productive learning in the classroom when the students were fully not engaged with the teacher and were engaged with their cell phones. So I think it's a huge move, and I know we don't have causal relationship, but I think common sense would say that if they're not on their cell phones, at least they have the opportunity through osmosis, if nothing else, to gather something from our teachers. So I appreciate that.
Thank you, Jeff.
Nice work, Jeff. At this time, we'll have the budget evaluation process.
Great.
With Chris.
Thanks, Dennis. I'd like to provide an update on the budget eval and program eval process that we've been engaged in. So again, just to recap, we've completed the review of all 48 of those identified programs. We did indicate the last 2 months that we'd identified 14 programs that we felt were in need of further analysis. We actually added one more program to that, so we've identified now 15 programs, and those are available for you here. So programs that we are analyzing more closely include mathematics and English language arts, social studies, and science. It's also important to note that when we think about programs that we reviewed, those are the largest programs that we reviewed. In other words, they have the largest number of staff involved and the largest number of courses that are included in each of them. Also looking at expenses around regular ed and special education support, world language, co-curricular programming and extracurricular programming, reading intervention, elementary band and elementary orchestra both, and also looking at multilingual learners, or what would sometimes be referred to as ESL or ELL, at-risk programming, as well as physical education. So just to give you a little bit of background in terms of how did you determine that these were programs that you needed to look at more specifically, and what are you doing? So the work that continues now beyond in this process is, as an example, when we looked at athletics, we identified that in this area, expenditures have risen substantially over the past several years, prompting the need for further analysis. So when we're seeing increases in spending in the athletic programming of 50%, 60%, 70% from the year prior, we've noticed a trend that has created some interest in looking at that a bit more closely. So the process that we followed then is to begin scheduling meetings with our secondary administrators to include athletic directors, also including our business office staff to assess cost drivers, and also to cross-reference spending and offerings with peer districts. So to say, are we in alignment with what other districts are offering in terms of sports? And are we, say, offering the same number of teams for JV boys basketball or JV girls basketball? And are we offering those in similar ways to what's happening in other or neighboring districts? We're also looking at stipends for our coaches. That certainly is a cost. That could be a cost driver. Looking at the cost for event staffing, as well as the fees that we're paying for officials when we're running games, as well as looking at transportation costs. Coincidentally, what we're learning is just across the board, all of those costs are going up. So it just costs more to hire officials. It costs more to pay event staff. And we have to have more event staff because we're offering, or we're playing, students are playing in more games. So this is the analysis that's happening now within those programs to make determinations about where we could potentially find efficiencies. And I wanted to give you a real-time example of the work that we're doing rather than just telling you we're looking at these 14 or 15 programs more closely. That's the analysis we're doing. G?
I would ask, this is pertains to athletics, the last slide.
Yep.
What % of the total budget is that? Do you know?
You know what? I would not know the answer to that. I don't know. Dr. Owens, do you know percentage of our overall budget that is consumed with athletics?
We can get that.
We can get that for you, G.
Yeah, because the reason I'm asking is, can significant cuts be made? As I remember, things come around all the time, then they come around again, generational things. I remember this was discussed a long time ago, and it came out that the athletic budget was like 0.5% of
not
the
very
total budget.
Yeah. Mhm.
There isn't really a lot of savings to be made.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
That's
Right.
my point.
Good point. And we can find it.
Dr. Owens?
One thing you can do is if you look in the budget book, and you look under the function 160000, that's all co-curricular. It will include athletics, but it includes other things, but at least that will give you a scope, a relationship of the 160 to the total budget.
What was that again? Fund 160?
Yeah, line 160.
Yeah.
Line 160?
Yeah, it's like.
1600000.
I can look at, I can send something out to the board tomorrow too.
Yeah, we can follow up.
Well, I
It's
think,
just a question that occurred to me while you were.
absolutely.
Of course.
Meg?
But I think also this process is about due diligence and about just taking a look at everything.
That's right.
And so some areas, there may be the ability for more cost savings, some less cost savings, but ultimately, every little bit helps.
Yep, and I think it's also about acknowledging, like we're going through the process of program and budget eval in an effort to find efficiencies, but we have also identified programs where we believe we're underspending. So I do want to point that out. So when we look at that list of 15 programs, some of them include areas where we feel like we're underspending currently, and we may need to be having conversations about what needs to be added. It's just an important note.
Caretakers of the public funds, I don't think this process ever ends. It's a process we're going through, but it's a process we'll continue to go through in one way or the other. So,
Of course.
and
Yep.
I appreciate the diligence the administration has given to bringing it up each month so that it is something that's before us and before the public. It's important.
It is important, right? Yep. In terms of position review, as you know, we review every single open position or vacant position in the district, whether that comes by way of retirement or resignation or transfer. We've to date reviewed a total of 387. 361 of those 387 we've categorized as fill as is. So in other words, we've determined are still needed and we've posted and attempted to fill. We have 15 positions that are currently frozen. Again, we may see that number slowly increase over the next couple of months as retirements or resignations are submitted. And we're really working our way through the staffing process, both at the elementary and secondary level. So we'll start making decisions about number of sections we'll be running in a core area or at the elementary level at a grade level. And once we have that information more solidified, we'll be able to potentially revisit those frozen positions and determine if we'll fill or eliminate. Total to date, we've had 11 positions eliminated.
Before that happens, are we able to see what positions, because we have in the past, what positions were eliminated, what they were?
Correct.
So those 15 frozen positions, as you comb through the programs and say, we don't need this, or we don't need this, I think it'd be nice to know what position are we eliminating? And there should be, other than a budget saving measure, there should be some rationale to why we're eliminating.
Making those decisions.
Okay?
Yep.
And we'll be able to see that?
Sure.
Before the eliminations happen?
And we can absolutely bring that back next month, depending on, I don't know by then. I know the first staffing meeting that I have scheduled with elementary doesn't happen until March 7th. So I'm not sure we'll have much updated information to share prior to the March meeting, but certainly in April.
And contracts have to go out when?
May 15th.
So we'll have the opportunity to say, I don't really think we should eliminate that because we think that's really important and we just want to keep it.
Most of those eliminations were due, for example, we had a student that was a special needs student that had an EA with them. They've left the district. We no longer need the position, and it happened through attrition. It wasn't like we laid anybody off or eliminated a program or a position.
No,
It's
I
done-
understand
yeah.
that, but that's the rationale I would like to hear.
Absolutely.
Before we eliminate a position.
Yeah, of course.
That's for information only. Go, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I had talked a little bit about, oh, did you have a question on that, Dennis?
No, I did not.
Okay. I've talked a little bit about the course perception surveys in terms of our Hanover partnership and kind of the next layer of review, primarily of English language arts and math. So we are finalizing that survey that will go out to students, to staff, and to families. We're currently in the process of, as you heard Sarah talk earlier about in her communications report, sending our district climate survey out to staff, students, and families, or to staff and families. We're looking at options to be able to incorporate this survey with that survey to increase engagement and response. So I have some work to continue or to finalize with our partners at Hanover to make sure that that would be possible. They would also help us to segregate some of our data, which would be a great help and very welcome for Sarah, who would gladly take back the time that desegregating that district climate and culture survey data will take for her. So more to come on that course survey perceptions, our perception survey. I do want to, in the spirit of transparency to our community members who have trusted us with those additional referendum dollars, I just want to take a moment, as we talked about a sizable purchase for our ELA resource, recap how we have spent those referendum dollars both last year and also what we're projecting for the upcoming year. So in year one, we had an additional $8.7 million in referendum funds. As you know, the new revenue, along with a $2.3 million increase in per pupil allocation, totaled approximately $11 million. We used 5.1 of that 11 million to address the deficit or to eliminate the deficit that existed. We also applied 2.5 million to increase wages as part of the wages and benefit package that Corey presented in April to the board last year. 2.7 addressed the increase in health insurance premiums. A 0.1 million was addressed to, or was provided for fund balance recovery. 0.5 to replace the roof at PJ Jacobs, and 0.1 was to address technology. So those were how the funds were spent last year. In terms of projections for those year two referendum dollars, you've heard me reference that 5.25 million. What we've currently projected is that we would use approximately 2.5 million for wages and benefits. The K6 ELA resource there is approximately 1.2. And you saw in this presentation that I had earlier, it was approximately 1.27. Safety and security, and this would be to address some PA systems in buildings, is approximately 1.1 million. And then we have a $360,000 cost, which would be renewing the curricular resource contract for IM at our secondary schools. When that purchase was made initially, it was a 3-year contract. Our adoption cycle for curriculum at all levels is 6 years. So we knew we had only funded half the contract essentially. Knowing that we're going to be reviewing social studies K-12 in the upcoming year, we would not have funds available in our ed services budget to do both. So we're grateful to have these referendum dollars available to purchase the last 3 years of that 6-year contract for IM. I do want to point out here and just revisit, this was an important update that Tom was able to share as part of his budget hearing presentation back on October 28th. We did have some news to celebrate just in terms of the levy coming in lower than we had anticipated. So that levy we had in 23-24 was at $6.70 per thousand. This year, the levy is coming in at $6.40 per thousand. That's about 30 cents less. So that certainly is something we want to celebrate. I also think it's important to point out that as part of the referendum campaign, when we were sharing information with community, we were indicating that the levy could be as high as $6.83. So we're coming in about 43 cents under what we had projected or what we had discussed as part of the referendum campaign. So that is important to be able to share with our community who have trusted us to be good stewards with those referendum dollars. And in terms of next steps, for short term, we'll continue to review and assess every open position. Also continue to engage those key stakeholders in reviewing those 15 programs. Long-term, we're continuing to enhance the evaluation process. The longer we do this, the better we're getting. We started this about a year and a half ago, having no idea, quite frankly, how to do this program and budget evaluation, because I'm not sure that any other district has done this to this degree and with this level of intentionality. But we are getting better, and we're feeling much more comfortable about the information we're getting and how it's helping us inform decisions that we're making. And we'll also maintain financial transparency for providing regular updates to the board and the community on where we identify efficiencies. That concludes my report for this month, but I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions for Chris?
Right, John?
I just want to underline this referendum stuff. I mean, it was, in my opinion, as a board member, it was essential that we pass the referendum. And we're now able to see that the dollars are here and what we have been able to utilize those dollars for, which are what we told the community that we needed. We were at 5.1 million then, and if we had not gotten those referendum dollars, we would have either been, well, we would have been both cutting programs, cutting potentially staff, as well as continuing to grow that deficit. I'm grateful that we had the property value growth that we had in this district. We were, and thanks to Tom, as he always is, he was very conservative with a 4% growth rate. We saw better than that. That is in part why we have been able to lower that tax levy versus increase it to the extent we promised the community. But it just underlines that we are really trying to use taxpayer dollars wisely, and we are trying to do our best to recognize the burden it is on taxpayers, but also ensure that our schools have the funding that we need to keep our mission achievable, to keep our staff, good staff recruited. I know we had staff who applied for the job this time around and recognized that we had passed a referendum. So again, I just want to point that out. It's just really big news, and I appreciate all the work that administration, superintendent, and Tom's office in particular did to make this happen.
Thank you, Meg.
Thanks.
Thanks for your comment, Meg. Any other comments? Going once, going twice. Just a reminder, we do have a school board meeting, a special one on the February 24th. You're all invited, 5:30 p.m., followed up by March 10th and April 14th regular ed school board meetings. At this time, I'm looking for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those